Hey everyone, this is Jane with Barlow Herbal, and it's been a long time since I've connected with you, and I was waiting for the exact right guest to bring on and do a quick interview because her message is so powerful. The person you're seeing on the screen, this is Tricia Nelson, and she's amazing and awesome and incredible because you know I only bring those kind of people to you. I was lucky enough to meet Tricia in person. It's been about 3 years, Tricia, I think. Does that sound right?
Yep, that sounds right.
Yeah, and she's one of those people that we immediately physically gravitated toward. We just knew that we were kindred spirits. Our souls kind of talked to each other and said, hey, there's a person that's out to change the world and just is a like-minded spirit. You're just so kind. Your message is so powerful. So I'm super happy that we get to talk to you and bring your message into this world, because I think emotional eating, we all do it. You know, when we're happy, when we're sad, when we're angry, when we're, I think we just all eat emotionally. So I'm going to read the back of your book. This is Tricia's book called Heal Your Hunger, which I love. So let me read her bio and then I'll let you talk, okay?
Okay.
Okay, so Tricia Nelson lost 50 pounds by identifying and healing the underlying causes of her emotional eating. She has spent nearly 30 years researching the hidden causes of the addictive personality. So 30 years, you can tell. Obviously, this is a beautiful young person that looks, I would never guess 30 years, Tricia. So Tricia is an emotional eating expert and the host of the very popular podcast, The Heal Your Hunger Show. A highly regarded speaker and coach, Tricia has been featured on NBC, CBS, KTLA, Fox, and Discovery Health. So she's a little bit of a celebrity, and we're so glad to get her on. And I'm going to adjust my camera because it was cutting off my head. Oh, it's still cutting off my head. Okay, so Tricia, what I'm most curious about, and I think people are too, is how long ago did you lose 50 pounds and how long have you kept it off? And then let's just kind of let the conversation flow from there.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me, Jane. It's just always wonderful to be in your presence. I think I was an emotional eater from the get-go, and I agree. I think everybody is. I think God made us to like food, so we would subsist. But I took it way too far, and food was an absolute obsession of mine from the get-go. I mean, I just love to eat, and food was like the big highlight for me. And if my family was going out to dinner, it's like all day long, I'd be all excited and I'd have heart palpitations, for the foods I was going to eat out at the Rusty's Scupper. And, and the things I always loved to eat were like the ooey gooey chewy foods, and my three favorite food groups were like sugar, fat, and starch. So, and you can get them all in one item, all the better. So, that's how I rolled. And from a very early age, I think I binged, and I didn't know what a binge was, but, very often on Sunday nights, I would end up getting sick to my stomach. I had sort of what seemed like a weak stomach, and I would vomit on Sunday nights and not every Sunday night, but often. And it wasn't until I was looking back after I started changing my life and recovering, I looked back, I'm like, why on Sunday nights? And I realized it's probably because I was with my family on the weekends and there was stress there, and pain there. And I was anesthetizing with food, so I was gorging myself on the weekends with pizza and popcorn and, cookies and all this. And then my stomach couldn't take it. And so I was definitely an emotional eater, responding to life, through food. Reacting, I guess, through food. And, that wouldn't have been a terrible thing for me, except for the fact that I gained weight really easily. And so it wasn't, until the weight started, really packing on that I was just miserable about my weight. I mean, I don't think most people are really upset about overeating. They're upset about the effects of overeating. And the effects for me were weight gain because I have a very slow metabolism. And so I was a pudgy kid. When I was maybe in fifth grade or so, my mom would take me shopping before school started. There are a lot of clothes that didn't fit me. So there was this I can't even believe this is true, but there was this clothing line called Chubettes. And she's like, here, let's try that. And I said, Mom, I'm never wearing a piece of clothing with a tag that says Chubettes on it. I'm sorry, but I have, I have to draw the line here. And
oh my God.
I know, right? Isn't that terrible? So anyway, the point is, I needed those clothes because they were larger size clothes because I was pretty fat. And I'll tell you, Jane, I just hated being fat. Like I hated it so much. It just plagued me. I was so uncomfortable. And I'd do these makeshift girdles. When I went to high school, I would cut off my pantyhose and make kind of like the control top part. I'd use that to kind of suck my fat in because I cared so much about how I looked. And I just was obsessed with food, and I would start to diet, and I did all kinds of diets and exercise programs and, pills and potions and lotions. And I did all kinds of things, and nothing I did really worked for any lasting period of time. I mean, if I dieted, I could maybe, be good for a couple weeks, and then I just break out in a binge and I couldn't take it anymore. And I was a nibbler. I was kind of a yo-yoer. So I'd nibble a lot, and then I'd yo-yo in my weight. So I'd be like up 20, down 10, up 10, down 5. I mean, there was one summer when I fluctuated between like 140 and 145, or maybe 145 and 150 for the entire summer. And I was trying so hard. So like, even when I was like trying hard, I was never really eating that healthy. I'd still have too much mayonnaise in my tuna salad, or I needed those extra comforts of fat and sugar and starch. And so I could never really slim down because of that. And after high school, I started to do more psychological things. Like I went to an eating disorders therapist, and I went to Overeaters Anonymous. So I was digging. Like, I'm like, okay, it's not just about diets and weighing and measuring and that kind of thing. And there's got to be something more, in my psyche. And so I started trying to do things about that. But again, those things did not have any lasting effect on my weight. They brought me some information about myself, and I started to look, self-evaluate and self-improve. But in terms of my weight, it did not make a dent. And I was so frustrated. And, after you've done so many things and you've just been around the block several times, and you continue to fluctuate and yo-yo in your weight, you get kind of discouraged, and like nothing works. Like, what's the point? And I was creeping toward that feeling of hopelessness and discouragement. And I was looking at my future, and I was young. I mean, I was quite young and had done a lot of things already. And I just thought to myself, I can't spend the next 80 years doing the exact same thing I've just spent the last 10 years doing, and I knew it wasn't healthy for me to yo-yo the way I was yo-yoing. And I just thought this, my life is a rerun, like a Groundhog Day.
Right. So was there like a turning point for you? I'm sure there probably was.
Well, here's what happened.
A gradual thing.
Sorry, I kind of go on and on. So here's what happened is I felt hopeless. And that's the point at which I started. I ran into a gal I knew from the 12-step program, and she was hopelessly bulimic, and nobody could help her. Like, everybody tried to sponsor her. Nobody could help her. And she showed up one day and she said, I haven't binged and purged in 2 weeks, and I haven't had the desire to. I thought, yeah, like what? Like, what do you mean? And it was written all over her. She was like composed. She was poised, beautiful, confident, totally different. And then another gal had the same type of transformation. Well, I went up to this other guy. I said, what are you doing? And she said, I'm working with this guy, Roy. So this is a man who's a spiritual healer, works with people with eating disorders and other addictions. And turns out the bulimic was working with him as well. And when I put all that together, I saw those transformations. I called Roy and I said, will you help me? So that was my transformation, is when I called him and he began to help me. And that really turned everything around. And that was close to 30 years ago. And it changed everything, because what he taught me is that my problem is not food. I mean, food is my solution. That's what I use when the problem of living gets too much for me. And so he's helped me to really deal with life on life's terms, but also to deal with the underlying causes. And, overeating overweight, eating disorders, they're all symptoms of deeper issues. And that's what has to be addressed. Everybody's chasing the symptom and they're not getting anywhere. 98% of all diets fail. So it really requires going deeper. And that's really what I was shown how to do. And that's what we've been doing for 30 years and what I do now with Heal Your Hunger in the online space.
So it's been 30 years and people need to know you ended up marrying Roy.
Yes, I did.
When I met you with Roy. Like you guys were together and I met you together.
Yeah.
How long have you been married?
We've only been married 8 years actually, but we've been doing this work together for 20, close to 30 years, 29 years.
Okay. So tell me how old you were when you got to work with Roy, because I think that was a gift for people. Like most people, they struggle along with it. And I know people who even just accept I'm going to be fat. And they do their best to be happy. They do their best to live their life. They do their best to raise their kids or be in a relationship or what. They just accept that. And I know people like that who just kind of go, you know what? I've done everything. I've done every diet. I've tried everything, what you just described. And they feel hopeless. But then I think that there's a part of human nature that just goes, you know what? I can't do anything about it. And I'm just going to accept that I'm fat.
Right. And that's
weight. And because it is bitterly unhappy for people.
It's a self-protective thing to say, look, enough is enough. Like, because here's the thing, it's almost good that somebody does that because diets don't work and they won't work. And so if somebody does give it up, that's actually healthier. Like it's better to stay the way you're in than to go up and down 100 pounds 5 times,
I agree. Or to be so unhappy that they're you just can't stop living but you know what? It's so big and it's so complicated.
But it doesn't have to be that way. The good news is that, is that there is a solution. It's just not in dieting. It's not in dieting. It's not in fierce exercise. I could never exercise as much as I ate. I was a binger and I packed away, 3,000 to 5,000 calories in a sitting. I eat out of the garbage. I'd have a binge, I'd get stuffed and I'd throw out the food, pass out. And 2 hours later, I had a little room in my tummy. I'd be like, I think I need that food. So, I've done a lot of horrifying things in the throes of my compulsion with food. But the thing is that people give up simply because what they've tried hasn't worked and they don't want to try another diet, and they shouldn't try another diet, for God's sakes. It will not work. And in my experience, the only hope is to deal with the emotional eating, because that's what people aren't dealing with. They're not addressing the underlying causes. My tagline and the name of my company, Heal Your Hunger, is get to the heart of why you overeat and how to stop. And getting to the heart of it is what matters. Deep down, I always say there's 3 primary drivers of our compulsion to eat, and with any addiction really. But I call it the PEP formula, or the PEP test. And P stands for painkiller. So we eat as a form of painkiller. Like we have pain, either buried pain from our childhood and pain from our current situations that we create on account of having pain from our childhood. So we bury that pain with food, and food's a great painkiller. It just puts a blanket over everything where we're feeling no pain, just temporarily, and then we have to eat some more. But the E stands for escape. So we try to escape life out of fear of living. Life gets too much. It gets stressful. It gets overwhelming. And we just want to just shut it out. So we try to escape life by, getting our favorite binge foods, our favorite binge TV shows, sitting down and just shutting the world out. And that's a big way that we use food. And the P stands for punishment. So we use food as a form of punishment. And this is probably the most overlooked thing, because it's like punishment. That's my favorite thing to do. There's nothing I'd rather do than sit and eat and watch TV. But the fact is that in the moment, yes, it's fun. And the next day, not so fun. We're bloated. We've got zits on our face. We cancel appointments with friends because we're embarrassed and ashamed about how bloated we are, or how sick we feel, or hungover from a sugar coma, So that's punishment that we do to ourselves, not to mention gaining enormous amounts of weight where we can't move effectively. We can't play sports with our kids. We can't, fit into our little black dress. I mean, it's like, it's very uncomfortable and very maiming to our bodies. And we literally are doing that to ourselves. So something is wrong. It's not just a pastime. It's like we are punishing ourselves. And in my experience, we do that on account of guilt. Emotional eaters are very sensitive to guilt. We're very sensitive souls. In my book, there's a chapter called The Anatomy of the Emotional Eater. And there's 24 traits that I write about in that chapter that really are like a personality composite of emotional eaters. Emotional eaters don't realize that we're different than your average folk. I mean, we actually respond to life in a different way and through these filters that we have. And I've never seen an emotional eater not have, they may not have all 24 of these traits, but a good number of them, they will be able to, when they read that, they'll go check, check, check. And one of those is that we're extremely sensitive souls. We feel deeply. And so we're very sensitive to guilt. And so guilt is another way that we use food, and we use food to really punish ourselves. And it does a good job. I mean, if you're an emotional eater and you have, occasional binges, how punishing that can feel.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of people, and even myself included, as you're talking, I've found myself caught in the past in some of these rhythms and emotional eating, because it's not just eating to numb up pain, but it's eating to celebrate something, like when you're happy. So that's an emotion. People think the emotion is always pain or anger or just hopelessness, but the emotion can be happiness or celebration as well. And I think it's really fascinating that when you get to the point where you can learn about what this is, and to say that people that are emotional eaters and overweight people are sensitive, I completely agree with that. Because they're sensitive to their very soul, almost to the point of like, they're just trying to crush that. So what I love here is your book, Heal Your Hunger, 7 Simple Steps to End Emotional Eating Now. So I would really encourage people to get this lovely book. It's, first of all, I've been through it. I haven't read the whole thing, so I just got it, but I've been through the first part and I've flipped through and I've read. I mean, so is there a way that you can kind of, and you've given some amazing information. I think if we stopped right now, people would be like, yeah, that's me. Yeah, that's me. But let's give people some tools, and not just tools, but hope. Because to me, the overeating and the being overweight or just the emotional eating, the pain of emotional eating, there's got to just be a way to end, because we live in so much abundance that we can go do a binge. We can go to the store and get all of whatever we want, and there's no lack of getting bad food that can help us numb. So, but then you know what? I'd say, beating yourself up after a weekend is like, I'm going to start on Monday. And I also know, and I'm kind of going on here too, but people will do pretty good during the week, and then they'll say, oh, it's the weekend. I'm going to go ahead and binge. I'm going to go ahead and reward myself.
Yeah.
And then it'll be like, oh, well, I've already blown it. I'm just going to keep blowing it all weekend, and then I'm going to start brand new on Monday.
Yeah.
Trust me, I know this because I've dealt with this in my 20s and 30s. I had, I wasn't 100 pounds overweight, but I was about 40 pounds overweight. And because I exercised, I was able to, be a very fat, big person. I had big bones and I'm tall. And anyway, so it was all very emotional for me too. So give us some ideas, give us some tools that can motivate people and give people hope about emotional eating.
You bet. So much of our eating is stress eating. And so the first step of my 7 simple steps is centeredness. And it's really, actually in the book, I switch them up in my course. I have a corresponding course that goes with the book. So it's actually, the first thing is connection and community. And what I always tell people is you can't overcome this problem on your own. You've got to have a community of people who are doing it also, because, personally, I believe food is the hardest addiction to overcome. bar none, because we have to eat 3 times a day. I mean, if you're an alcoholic, you can put the plug in the jug, that's it. You know, gambling, stay out of casinos. But for the overeater, we've got to take that tiger out of the cage and pet it 3 times a day. So, I mean, this is dicey.
Put it.
Yeah, it's dicey. And so we've got to be hooked up with people. And I have in my program, I have something called the Heal Your Hunger community. And people get so much support from that because they're not the only ones. First of all, just realizing how common this problem is and how much we've done the same crazy stuff around food. I mean, we're always telling ourselves we're the only one. I'm the only one who's ever eaten out of the garbage. Well, I did a video about that like 6 years ago, and it's gotten like 30,000 hits because people relate to it, you know?
I did that.
Yeah.
I would throw away a bunch of sugar or a leftover cake after I'd taken a fork and literally not gotten a piece. After I ate the piece, I would eat with a fork and I would make myself like so sick, and then I would throw it away.
Yep.
The rest of the cake. And then the next day I would go, well, you know what? I'm just gonna have a little piece. And I bet part of it's still good. If none of it touched any other garbage in there.
Yep. It's
I only did that a couple times, but yeah, you know what? This is the place where everybody needs to have validation that we all have these human things that we do that we're completely embarrassed about.
Totally. And that's why it's so important that people be connected with other emotional eaters, because that when we lock arms, it's so much easier, you know, to really fight this foe. And so the next thing is centeredness. And see, so much of the time we wake up in the morning and we just get going. And what's happening is that so much of the time emotional eaters are, you know, we're very outward directed. And so we're looking for validation from outside of us. And so we're ending up, we're not connected to our inner selves. Like we're not tapped into our divine source or spirit, God, whatever you want to call it. And so we go out in the world and we're just buffeted around by the stress of the day, you know, and by wanting to please other people. And so we're just out there and the circumstances of life are just happening and we're reacting. Whereas if we take time in the morning for meditation, prayer, spiritual reading, writing, I call them the 6 self-care success secrets. Talking, walking. I go on a walk pray every morning where I walk and I pray. But I also meditate, and there's a lot of things I do, but the purpose of them is they help me get connected with who I am. They help me connect with my higher self, my best self, you know, and when I do that, it grounds me and it helps me go out into the world, and it helps me realize I have a source from which to respond to life instead of just reacting to life. And so that getting centered in the morning is so important. It's incredibly helpful. You know, and I think people just don't realize that they have this inner source, and when they tap into it, it can actually help with every bit of stress in their life.
The next is practice, right?
Say that again.
It takes practice. And
oh my goodness. Well, you know, so many people know they should meditate. Like it's not a secret that meditation is helpful, but like the idea of meditation is so overwhelming to most people. And especially with emotional eaters, you know, emotional eaters are typically have very busy minds. Like we have racing minds. And so we always think, oh, I can't meditate. My mind's too busy. Well, that's the point. Like that's why you should meditate. So,
and you know what, even if because I've done a lot of research on meditation, because you always hear about how good meditation is. And it's kind of like to be able to shut your brain off and have quiet is sometimes almost impossible for most people.
Yeah.
So it's just simply getting in a quiet space. And I'm sure you go through this in your book, but it's just simply kind of taking a minute to just be with you. And I really think that the walking where you know, that's a big thing that I tell people all the time to do. Hyperhydrate with I do a quart jar of water, and then I try to go on a 15 to 20 minute walk every morning.
Yeah.
Just to get out. And this is before I eat anything. This only thing I've done is get dressed, drink my water, brush my teeth, put my clothes on, and go. So if you have to get up 20 or 30 minutes early, and to me, that's my meditation place, because I have truly tried, and it doesn't work for me to sit somewhere. So when I go out, I walk by myself. and I walk in my neighborhood, and it's so meditative, and it's grounding and centering. So if you're thinking of ideas, and I'm sure you've got some ideas in your book, but so that's number one.
Yeah. So getting centered in whatever way does work for you. It's so important. But the idea is, instead of looking outside of us, going within and realizing that source of power that we do have inside, that spiritual power, and connecting with that. And so all these different self-care secrets are so, so important. The next thing is something I call clean eating, which is really, I have something that I recommend to people, and it's called 3-meal magic. And it's literally eating 3 meals a day with nothing in between. And that's it. Like, I'm not a nutrition and diet person, because emotional eaters aren't stupid. Like, they kind of know, they've been reading the books for decades, and they know what they should eat and what they shouldn't eat. Yeah. So it's not lack of knowledge, it's lack of ability to follow through. And so I don't get into the nutrition because, except to say, if you have a physical addiction to sugar, which I do, you're going to have a tough time not overeating if you're still eating sugar, because the sugar will demand more sugar. Same with, grains and flours and that kind of thing. They can be physically addictive and just call the shots once they're in our bodies. So, but beyond that, it's really a question of the emotions and responding to life with emotions. But when we eat 3 meals a day, not as a diet, but simply as a way of having space between our meals, then we can start identifying what emotions are actually in there. Because when we're nibbling and grazing all day, we don't know what we're feeling. Like, we have no idea what our emotions are. And we have to start tuning in and tapping into what our emotions are. And that's why the 3-meal magic is so instructive for that. Again, not as a diet, but as a tool for being able to start to identify what we're feeling and what's going on. And this is the best way you can identify the difference between emotional hunger and physical hunger. Because so much of the time, I'm still to this day amazed at how close emotional hunger seems to be to physical hunger. Like, whenever I'm emotional, like, I'll have a phone call to make or something, and I'll be like, oh, I'm really hungry right now, and if it's 10 o'clock in the morning, if I eat breakfast at 8 or 7 and it's 10, I know it's not time to eat. This is where the parameters of the 3 meals is so helpful, because I easily convince myself it's time for a snack, but really I'm afraid to make the phone call, right? So when I know, no, it's not lunchtime yet, and you already had a good breakfast. When I have those parameters in between, I'm having emotions, not physical hunger, but emotional hunger. And then I can sort of talk myself down from that and say, you know what? You're probably afraid of something. What are you afraid of? Oh, I have to make this kind of scary phone call. And so I can realize that that's what's happening. And so that space between the meals is just so helpful for helping us really start to tap in and tune into our emotional lives, because so much of the time we're just numb to that. I have people who are obese say to me when they hear what I do, they're like, oh yeah, I'm not an emotional eater. And I think, well, you might find that you are if you weren't eating all the time, and I'm not being flippant. I'm just saying that, of course, you don't relate to emotional eating because you're numbed out from the eating that you're doing. Whereas if you're not eating, there's a funny saying, if you want to find out why you eat, stop eating, so
it's a good saying.
Yeah. And not literally starving yourself, but just not overeating. The next thing is communication, because emotional eaters are really typically not the best communicators, because we stuff it, instead of, I have a saying in the book, which is say it, don't stuff it, and the fact is emotional eaters are consummate people pleasers, and we want people to like us. We want the validation from the outside of us, instead of finding it from within us. And so we're constantly doing things for other people. We're overdoing, we're overcommitting. And then the problem with people pleasing is that we're tired, we're stressed out, and we're resentful, because we never please people to the extent, or they're never pleased to the extent that we anticipate they're going to be. And we end up grumbling and thinking, you know what, I busted my ass, and, they didn't even appreciate it.
and then it's time to eat something to numb that up.
It's a perfect excuse, isn't it?
Yeah.
Perfect excuse, screw them all. I'm going to have my favorite ice cream.
Or a whole pizza.
Sure, or both. Oh. Little cheese and ice cream. So yeah. So that's important. And I have something in the book called this 10 Secrets to Expressing Yourself with Confidence. And so I really show people step by step how to start speaking up, because we're afraid to. Like, we're just so afraid to speak our mind. And that's why we've stuffed it for so long. We feel like our opinion doesn't matter. We feel like we're not smart enough, or we're not, articulate enough, and we just keep quiet. But when we don't express ourselves, we do end up having to stuff it down with food. And so it's like, this is why diets are so silly. Like, you can't just take food away from an emotional eater. You have to change how you're living. And this is one of the vital things that need to be changed. Is we have to start expressing ourselves honestly, or else we're doomed to always stuff. And so I teach people literally how to start doing that in a way that's easy and doable, and not too scary, and not too like we're going to turn a fire hose on everybody.
I love that. That's what I love so much about you, because if people can tell, if you're watching this right now, you can tell not only how passionate that you are, Tricia, but just how knowledgeable. Because to me, this is something that you have experience with, you live and breathe it, and you help people all day long. You had me on your podcast a few months ago, and you know what? It's just, I just think your message can resonate. Like everything you're saying, I have had personal experience, and I know people, and I have personal experience with family members that can feel the same thing. So, I love that we're sharing this. So yes.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for that. No, it's true. I'm very passionate. It's my favorite thing in the whole world to talk about, because it's not being talked about enough. And I just want people to know that they're not alone, and there is definitely a solution. The next of the 7 steps is consciousness. And, all my steps start with C, if you haven't noticed. And it's, when I decided consciousness was going to be one of the names of the steps, I thought, that's a little woo-woo, a little kind of nebulous. How are you going to make that one of the steps? And I tried to work around it. I'm like, I can't, because the truth is that when we're overeating, we're asleep. Our consciousness has a big, it's like being under, many feet of snow in Utah, right? And so it's like there's a blanket over everything. And when you stop overeating, you begin to wake up. And when you wake up, you also don't need to eat. So they go hand in hand. But the consciousness is really about, waking up to ourselves, waking up to our emotions, waking up to the fact that we're not isolated beings in this world. It's not eat or be at, me against you. It's really about us being a universal consciousness, and the fact that we are all one. These concepts we wake up to naturally when we stop hurting ourselves with food, and it can strengthen, and help us build a new foundation, because we have to see the world in a new light. We have to see ourselves in a new light. And we also have to begin to really address and heal our grudges, and consciousness is something that, we have had kind of a dark consciousness, a one of self-hatred in a lot of ways, in the way we've abused ourselves with food. And so we have to really wake up to who we really are, not who we think we are, or we try to portray to the world that we are, but who we really are, and start, grappling with some of those things and healing them, so we can, step out into the world as the person, God truly made us to be. So that's why that's one of the steps.
No, I love that. And I really truly believe that what you said about holding on to grudges, forgiveness is so key to all forms of health. And then realizing that we're all connected. You can numb yourself with whatever your choice is, whether that be food or alcohol or whatever. But, for the sake of what we're talking about, I think the food thing is so much more universal, because it is something that you can't just stop. You at least you have, you still have to eat. But the thing is, by overeating and numbing yourself, it doesn't mean you're not still connected to the organism that is just life and love. But you are pulling yourself out of that, so you can't feel any of that. But you're still connected. So people need to, I think, what I'm just getting from this little section about consciousness is we are all just these conscious, beautiful human souls living on this planet together. And the more you can tap into that on a conscious level, holy cow, everything that's open to you for happiness is there.
Yes. Well, it's true. And, fear and isolation are like, two really strong, traits of the overeater, of the emotional eater. I mean, we love to isolate. You know, we get our food, we hole up in our house with our TV shows, and we just isolate. And that isolation takes us out of the world, and it creates a disconnect between us and the world. And the more disconnected we are, the more afraid we are. And the more afraid we are, the more we like cling to our food to make us feel safe. And so it's a vicious cycle. And that's why consciousness is so important, because we have to realize that, first of all, we need other people in order to heal. Like we are not islands. We have to have people. And I really believe I created, at a spiritual level, I created this condition of being an emotional eater, a hopeless emotional eater, so that I would have to depend on other people in order for a way out. Like the last thing I wanted to do is need other people. And that's probably true. It's probably the human condition, but yeah, but I have to depend on other people. And so it necessitates that I lean on other people. And that's not a bad thing. That has built a whole new world for me by connecting, like being forced to connect to other people. So,
yeah, and maybe someone could swap out, I have to connect with other people. We could say, I get to connect with other people.
Totally.
Because it can be like you said, it's like, oh, I have to do this, but this is what makes us human. We're pack animals. We're people. We're supposed to be together and in communities. And yeah, I just love this message so much, because I know there's going to be so many people that are going to benefit. So,
yeah, it's true. In my course, my 7 Simple Steps and Emotional Eating Now, it's an online course. And I think it's the right combination. We have a private Facebook group, where people can connect and support each other. But I think it's the right combination, because we are just coming out of hiding. We are just coming out of isolation. So the fact that we're not just in a room with each other all together, bearing our souls, we're online, there's a little bit of a distance, but we're sort of creeping out of our hole of isolation into the world of other people, and into, the connectivity of other people who are like us. It's really that nice blend where, we're not totally outing ourselves, and yet we're still reaching out. And I think that's really cool.
Right. And honestly, that's what I love about how we're able to be connected as humans with modern technology, because I think you have to appreciate that we get to connect with other people without having to branch out into the scary world. We can first go to here.
Yes.
Because I feel like when I talk to you like this, I feel like I'm fully connecting with you.
Totally.
And that's kind of like one of my favorite, like we just did an interview last week, and we just saw each other a week and a half ago. And so the thing is this to me is a beautiful part of modern technology, is that you can connect with people, you can feel their spirits, you can feel their soul, you can feel their pain, and vice versa. And it can be a great way for people to just step out and start to heal.
Amen. I totally agree. And it is a beautiful thing. The next step is causes, because, I talk about the underlying causes. I talk about the PEP test, the pain, the fear, the escape and the punishment. But what creates that pain, fear, and guilt that that we're reacting to? And we have to dig into that further. I don't want to just throw around the words underlying causes without showing people what those causes are. And so I do that in the causes chapter. I dig into that. I have an acronym called SOURCE. And so it helps people really look at the different areas of their life where those causes are actually taking place and creating these other emotions that we then, eat over. So, and the last thing is courage. And I love this, because all the other steps, the other 6 steps take a lot of courage. It takes courage to even read a book about emotional eating, because we're going to blow our minds, and start to look at this from a whole new paradigm. And it's so important. Instead of continuing on with the same old, we're going to look at this in a new way. And then we're going to start doing things that are really going to make a difference. And I think that takes courage, and it doesn't just happen. We have to get up each day and practice new habits. And that takes a tremendous amount of courage, speaking up for ourselves. That takes a tremendous amount of courage. Eating 3 meals a day and not nibbling throughout the day, that takes a lot of courage, and so I just think it's really important to remind ourselves that these things are not easy. They don't just happen, and that we are transforming our lives, and that's going to take everything we've got. We have to reach inside of us very deep and begin to chart a new course in order to really break free of this really debilitating habit. So
yeah, that's a really good way to describe it. And I honestly, one of the biggest reasons that I wanted to talk with you and share you is because from where I sit and the work that I get to do with herbal healing, there's so many of those issues, the physical diseases and the issues that we have, that can clear up and heal with the proper nutrition and the proper emotion attached to food. That this to me is such a core thing, and it's something I talk about all the time. And people that I talk with on the phone, well, what are you eating? And what are you fueling yourself with? So to me, this is like such an important, giant piece of the health puzzle, because you can't throw a bunch of supplements or anything herbal at a person if they just can't get to the cause of what's causing the disease a lot of times in the first place. Because I've watched documentaries. I'm like you. This is what I study. This is what I do all day long. And there is so much power in changing your nutrition. So not just getting the emotional eating in check, but then once you get that in check, then it's like, what's going to make my body and my mind more brilliant because of what I put in it? Then you get to fine tune it. So not just get the emotional eating in check, but what's going to make me the most healthy? And it's kind of indescribable to tell people how it feels to feel really good in your physical body unless you experience it yourself.
There's no question, but those two things are so connected.
They are.
The emotions that are trapped inside of us make us not want to take care of ourselves.
Yes, I agree.
You clear that out, and it's progressive. If you sit around and you don't exercise, you feel kind of crappy, and then you don't want to eat well, so you just eat crappy food, or you order in, you order the pizza or the Chinese food or whatever, and then you feel worse, and then you sit on the couch some more. So it's like it gets progressively worse, but it also gets progressively better when you start to face this block of emotions inside and start ditching them, throwing them out. You feel lighter, and then you naturally want to treat your body with respect. Like you start to have respect for yourself, and feel lighter. You're no longer filled with anger and resentment and unforgiveness and, self-hatred and loathing and all those things. You feel better. And then you naturally gravitate towards foods that are healthier because you're like, I want to eat something that makes me feel good because I'm already feeling good, And then when you eat healthy foods, then you feel even more empowered to go for a walk or go for a jog, or it's like, it just gets progressively better. So the nutrition is like inextricably linked with the emotional work, because so much of the time where people are trying to eat right without dealing with this emotional stuff, and they can't because it's imposed from the outside in. Like they're trying to do something they have no desire to do. Whereas if you start like clearing out the garbage inside, you naturally feel better, and you naturally want to treat yourself with respect. And so you naturally choose things that are healthier. I mean, this is what's happened for everybody who, works with us, is that they all of a sudden like salads, and the only way to eat salads on an ongoing basis is to want to eat salads.
And to like them.
Yeah, you have to like them and to want them. And the only way you're going to want them is if you're cleared out and you feel good. Like you just feel good about it's really feeling good about yourself. You may not always feel good, but you are developing a sense of self-respect and self-love that just lends itself to healthy habits, because you want to take care of yourself like that. It's coming from the inside out, and that's the only way it's going to be lasting.
Right. So we're going to show some ways that people can connect with you, whether it's your book, your online course.
Yeah.
There's going to be links below this video with all of this stuff. If you wanted to connect, and with your Facebook community, just so you can find people that
here's the thing to make it easy. The link below is going to be the link to get a whole bunch of book bonuses as somebody does purchase my book, like a slew of really cool things that a person will get just for buying the book. And the book is like $6 or $7 on Amazon, but they have to go through the link to get the bonuses. It's like you go there, and then when you buy, you use that link to buy the book, and then you use a little code and put it in the little box, and then you get all kinds of bonuses. And they're so helpful, and they're companions to the book. So it's sort of like a visual, like a cheat sheet. There's all these cheat sheets that correspond with the information in the book. So definitely start there. And then they'll actually get an email from me, and I'll give them information about the course and all that kind of thing also.
Yeah, so honestly, if you find yourself in a situation where you feel like you could really benefit, or someone in your life could benefit, or they're ready, I don't know any person who's not ready, especially if it's approached right, with this information, please connect with her. At the very least, check out her book, connect in with her in her community. And like when she says bonuses and crazy great things, this is a person who's been doing this for a really long time. So the stuff that you're going to get, you can obviously see from just listening to you, Tricia, that people are going to get some crazy good tools. Yeah. And all it's going to really take for an investment at this point is just saying yes. Because this book is so inexpensive. It's almost ridiculous. You're only charging $6 or $7 for it.
And show them the cartoons. Like they're not just words. I'm very visual, and I had to have cartoons in my book and big quotes and that kind of thing. Yeah, because
no, it's really great. In fact, there's a picture of you when you're a little girl in here with a round, chubby face.
Yeah, fat girl.
Cute with braces, and then there's a picture of you.
Yep.
And the thing is, okay, so let's maybe end this with something usable, because I think you gave so much great information, and people might recognize themselves in just our conversation with each other. So what's something that, before we end this, that you can say, start with this, like start with this tool, like here's a tool. And I do love the eat 3 meals a day. To me, the magic 3 meals, that's a good tool.
Yeah.
And then you have to say, you know what, this is what I'm going to do. I'm not going to snack between, so besides that one, because that to me was a very good takeaway that someone could implement right away. So,
well, taking off on that concept is don't ever skip a meal again.
Okay, so intermittent fasting is not for you if you're an emotional eater.
That's right. It's a good concept. It's great. There's great books about it. But if you're an emotional eater, it's a complete setup, because you have to understand, again, this is like the emotional eater is not your average Joe. Like we have in our head, when we skip a meal, we do it because we think we're going to game it. Like we're going to game the system, and we're going to skip a meal and we're going to lose weight. Like I'm not going to eat breakfast, all we do is eat more at night. Like we have a binge at night because we're starving. And so the quickest way to lose weight, if that's your goal, is to eat 3 meals and to never skip a meal. And it's like, there's all kinds of good detoxes and all kinds of stuff. And I don't do them because they're a setup for me. Like I can't afford, because there's this little bugger in our head that's like, ooh, we can't help but connect it to weight loss and think we're gaming the system. But our bodies, like they will get the best of us. I promise. They'll get that food that we're not giving them. Like they'll take it, in one way or another. So
well, I think that's a huge takeaway, Tricia, because honestly, one of the last videos that I did was about intermittent fasting. It was the number one. There was a list of anti-aging tips, and the number one thing was intermittent fasting. It works wonderfully for me, but I've centered in on the other things. I used to eat emotionally a lot more than I did, not to the point of, I was pretty uncomfortable and I was pretty unhappy, 40 pounds overweight on anybody, which might not sound like a lot. And if you have 100 pounds to lose, you might think, oh, well, what are you talking about? 40 pounds, you have no idea what it feels like. Well, yeah, 40 pounds is a lot of weight for anybody to be over. So I love that.
Well, also, truthfully, 3 meals a day, I eat dinner like around 5, and I don't eat dinner. I mean, I don't eat breakfast for another 12 or 13 hours.
That's a
So
little bit intermittent.
yeah, that's what I mean, is it's actually built into the system. It's just that your body gets used to those meals. If the meals are equal in value, you know, in calorie, you know, intake or whatever, size, however you want to put that, your body, it's just like, it's getting back to treating your body with just love and care. And there's something very caring about feeding yourself 3 meals a day, cutting vegetables, you know, making, you know, really putting care into your meals, you know, good raw foods from the farmer's market. I mean, that kind of self-care not only is good for you physically, but emotionally and mentally and spiritually as well. Because what's happening is, for our whole lives, we've been like, I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to make my body what I want it to be. I'm going to exercise. I'm going to, you know, and we're into this fight with our bodies. And it's like, imagine if that was your little baby, like it was your sweet little daughter. I mean, would you be treating her that way? Like, come on, jog, like jog harder, exercise harder. Let's get that weight down. We'd never do that to your sweet little girl, you know, or boy. But the thing is, we do that to ourselves. So just the act of 3 meals a day and taking time to prepare really healthy meals, what we're building in our consciousness is that we deserve good treatment, you know, and we have not given ourselves good treatment. And so just that act will build into our consciousness the idea that we deserve the time it takes to cook, you know, nutritious meals, but also that, you know, we're not going to, you know, starve ourselves. We would never, you know, have our kids skip a meal. Like we know, like a growing child needs 3 meals. Like we're not going to say, sorry, kid, you're not having lunch today. You know, you need to lose some weight, you know? So
Yeah,
we don't
that is such a good way to put it, Tricia.
Okay, so it's really self-care. Like this is what it's a whole package deal. We need to take care of ourselves and turn the tide on like working against ourselves and trying to force something. Like you don't need to try to lose weight. If you eat 3 meals a day and if you stop, like if you face and address the emotional eating, you know, which I will give you plenty of support to do if you want it. And people are getting amazing results from it. If you do that, the weight will take care of itself.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's obvious if you got to the end of this video that you got some great stuff. And it's also obvious that Tricia and I could talk for a long time.
Wait, is it over?
Is it time to be done? Well, this is what I'm thinking. I think when people see the minutes at the end, like when they click on the video, because I don't edit and I only do one take, I think there's always some amazing nuggets that people will get.
Yeah.
So
thank you for sticking with us.
Yeah, and you can see why I love this girl so much. And I so great we got to see each other like a week and a half ago, Tricia, seriously.
Yeah.
I didn't get to hug on you as long as I would have liked.
I know.
But it's okay. It was we were at a big busy conference and we didn't get a chance to sit next to each other, but we saw each other, we did hug, but
making up for it now.
Yes, for sure. So please connect with Tricia. Please leave some questions. This is going to be on my YouTube channel, and I'm going to kind of release it everywhere that I can help, because I think this is such a huge thing that affects everything. It affects our lives, our relationships, our spirituality. It affects everything. And we still, like you said, we still have to eat. We can't just put a cork in the bottle if we can't drink. It's not that easy. But it takes support, and you are living proof that this is something that's sustainable, is maintainable, and it's a life full of joy. Because I'll bet you anything that you still love food and you love to eat food.
Great meals. I make great salads. Awesome.
And it's not just salads. I mean,
no, I great. I live in LA, and I've got great restaurants around me that I enjoy.
Exactly. So it's not about deprivation. It's about really bringing joy back into food without the painful emotion attached. So,
Amen.
Tricia, thank you.
Thank you
so much for connecting with me today. I know people are going to get so much value out of this. And please do me a favor and at least get this book, get the bonuses, use her code, and connect back with me and let me know what you got. I mean, I would love some feedback. So leave me a comment below this video and connect with Tricia, because it'll be one of the very best things that you ever do. I don't care how old you are. I don't care how young you are. If you've got an emotional eating thing that you recognize in this, then this is for you. So thanks again, Tricia.
Thank you.
Have a great day, everybody. Let me see where my thing here so I can end. And we'll have a great, we'll talk to you guys soon. Talk to you soon.